Like my mental health is horrible, but I know exactly why. So whenever I'm in therapy, which I'm like, yeah, I need therapy, and I talk to my therapist and I'm like, I'm feeling this way, which is probably because of this, so I should implement this. And she's like,
What you're talking about is called intellectualization. Trauma survivors often intellectualize as a coping mechanism to protect themselves from overwhelming emotions associated with their experiences. Intellectualization is a defense mechanism where individuals focus on analyzing or rationalizing their situation rather than feeling the associated emotions. So it has a number of advantages for the trauma survivor. I don't know what the advantage is in your case. It could be emotional detachment. Experiencing trauma is immensely painful. So by focusing on facts, logic, and details, survivors can create a sense of distance from their feelings, which helps them to avoid being overwhelmed. Sometimes it gives trauma survivors a sense of control. Since trauma leaves survivors feeling helpless, intellectualizing allows them to regain a sense of control by breaking down the situation into something that can be more easily understood or analyzed. For many trauma survivors, they're intellectualizing because they're trying to avoid vulnerability. Since emotions can make us feel exposed and vulnerable, intellectualization provides sort of like a safe zone where they don't have to confront their pain and directly experience the uncomfortable emotions that are associated with the trauma they experienced or the abuse of their past. Sometimes it was just emotional neglect. Sometimes it was even less. But in any case, trauma survivors could have a difficulty even identifying and expressing their own emotions. Some feel that trauma can disrupt the connection between the mind and the body, making it difficult for trauma survivors to recognize and process their feelings. So focusing on thoughts instead of emotions can feel more accessible for the trauma survivor. Some trauma survivors have an overactive mindset. For instance, you may experience hypervigilance. Many trauma survivors develop hypervigilance, constantly scanning for threats. Intellectualizing fits into that mindset by keeping their thoughts constantly active and alert, even if they're just ruminating about the past. Another thing that can ultimately lead someone to intellectualizing, like you're doing, could just be the culture or the environmental influences. Some survivors come from environments where emotional expression was discouraged or unsafe, leading them to rely on intellectualization as their primary way of coping. So if you find yourself being an intellectualizer, what you should ask yourself is, okay, let me intellectualize the way that I can actually get over the maladaptive traits or the trauma that is causing me to self-sabotage in my life. Because while intellectualizing can provide short-term relief, it can hinder your actual emotional healing in the long run by preventing you from fully processing and integrating your experiences. So what a good therapist is going to do is gently help you to connect yourself to your emotions and help you to connect to the solutions. Your life needs to be run by the intellectual part of your mind. So you're not wrong for intellectualizing to a degree. But what you have to learn to do now is once you figure out what are the things you should implement, you need to then implement them. You have to recognize your intellectual self as being the leader of the self and implement the great ideas that you're coming up with. And so if you have a problem with lying, and the reason you have a problem with lying, you can intellectualize because your parents were too harsh, so you felt afraid to tell the truth because you grew up in that harsh environment, and then that became a habit through your childhood, and now your brain has developed from 20 years of being a pathological liar. You are one of the best liars out there, and now you can lie everywhere you go. Well, now you should recognize that's no longer an adaptive strategy for life. It's going to cost you so many things in life to be a liar. So you have to use your same intellectualization to convince yourself that that old way of being is not chosen by you and will not be chosen by you any further. You have to intellectually make a decision, make a choice that you will not be that liar that you used to be, or in many cases, people pleaser. And then finally, you have to implement the actual strategies that you're able to come up with, or that your therapist helps you to come up with, such as practicing telling the truth at times when telling a lie would be more convenient and easier, visualizing yourself telling the truth at times when telling a lie would be more convenient and easier. And by implementing these actual strategies, you're going to be able to overcome the issue. And that's what it's all about. It's about healing, not just sitting back and saying, man, isn't it crazy that I intellectualize all the time? No, let's put the actual implementations into our life and get them going. And you can start right now. So start out by making a list, 5 reasons why it's bad for you to continue to do the thing that you're doing, and then make the decision in your mind to do differently, and then start visualizing yourself doing that, and then put it into practice in your life.